Hello, hello. I'm Lexi Warhay, and today I'll be presenting two different strategies to you and how I think they fit into the Native American culture. The first strategy being Strategy 18, which is systematic artifact investigation, and the second strategy being culturally responsive teaching techniques. So, Strategy 18 questions. I want you to think about, what do you think of when you hear the word Native American elders? I'll give you just a second to think about it. So, what do you think of? Or how about, why are traditions so important to the Native American community? Have you ever sat down and thought why it is so important and why they do their traditions the way they do them? Here's another one for you. Why don't elders trust Americans? Have you noticed that? Or is this new information to you? Or, even better, how does what happened in the past affect the present? Throughout this presentation, I'll be touching on a bit of those questions, and I hope by the end of this presentation you have a better grasp on Native Americans and the elders in particular, along with the school setting and how kids are so far behind, but I'll be touching on that a little later. Elders. At the beginning of this presentation, I asked you what came to mind when you thought elders, Native American elders. Well, here's what comes to my mind. In American Indian education, within each tribe, elders are repositories of cultural and philosophical knowledge and are the transmitters of knowledge, including basic beliefs, teaching, encouraging, and showing the ways of faith in the Great Spirit, the Creator, also known as God. Native American elders are known as libraries of Indian education and knowledge. If you go up to a Native American elder and you ask them, hey, what about this tradition is so important? Or, hey, why do you get to keep the sacred dream catcher or whatever it may be? They're going to have a straight answer for you. But I want you to know that they will not look you in the eye. They will not be very outgoing and excited because they are very old fashioned and you have to earn their respect. You have to earn it and you have to want to be there with them. They can feel when you don't want to be there. In most cases, elders also do keep the sacred artifacts until it comes time to pass them down before they pass away. Thoughts. Why don't elders trust Americans? Have you ever noticed that us Americans are great at making promises we can't keep? Well, the Native Americans have noticed that too. We simply offered them money for their land, but never gave them their money. But they gave us their land. They are very old fashioned. They want to know what they are doing is right. Also, the US government. When I was in EDU 311 a couple blocks ago, we had Mr. Redbird come up from the Northern Cheyenne Reservation and talk to us about the government and how the elders and even almost all of the Native Americans up there don't trust the government because they simply are out to get them, as he put it. Meaning, they will do anything in their power to make sure that they can wipe out the population. They don't want anything to do with them. Again, this is from a person who has lived their perspective. Um, but it is really important. You must earn their respects. You must talk to them in an old-fashioned manner and do the old-fashioned things. If you're having a council meeting with the government and the Native American Council, Are you going to just walk in there and be like, hey, I'm ready to present this information to you. I want you to pay attention to me. I want you to stare me dead in the eyes. No, of course you're not, right? Because that's not how Native Americans work. You have to go in there, and before any council meeting or any meeting in general, those Native Americans are going to sit there and pray and be thankful for what they have, etc. Now, moving on to traditions. If you look at all the traditions I have up here, powwow, drum circles, governing principles, kinship, do you know what any of them are? I'll touch base on a couple of them for you. Powwows. It's a way for nations to come together in times of success, like hunting or a battle. After World War I and World War II, powwows became a way to honor Native American veterans who went to war. The term powwow comes from the word medicine man in the 20th century. Drum circles. Drum circles are known as the heartbeat of Mother Nature. Governing principles. Each tribe has their own laws, principles, policies, and leaders. Native Americans' life is different today than it was centuries ago because of being forced to integrate in the 18th century. Promises broken, life has been dramatically changed for all of them. And last but not least, kinship. Kinship is important for many Native American ties. It determines what gets passed down from generation to generation. It includes practical nature, land ownership, and successors in leadership along with wisdom and teaching. So, do you know why traditions are valuable to Native Americans? Traditions are diverse, but they do hold them together and make them their own community. Native American nation has its own distinct way of living. They live out there on their own land. They used to hunt for their food. They used to fight for their food. But altogether, it holds them together. A lot of Native American tribes share characteristics, but each tradition is usually from spoken transmission. Do you know what spoken transmission means? It basically is their voice, their language, because most Native American tribes don't speak the same language, but they do communicate through spoken transmission and their voices and how they display themselves as a whole. So, strategy 18, systematic artifact investigation. Using artifacts as a primary source ties to the authentic work of social scientists who may use the study of material culture in their own research. Also, students will be observing information from two artifacts that can be obtained through study of material culture through compare and contrast. Social studies standards. The standards that this um, strategy uses is culture, time, continuity, and change, people, places, and environment. Can you guess how this is used in schools and how it's taught? And then the English language arts standard. While students collect data from past and present artifacts, they will be using their language arts to communicate with the class. Standard 5. Students employ a wide range of strategies as they write and use different writing process elements appropriately to communicate with different audiences for a variety of purposes. How is what is happening in the past affecting the present? If you make those observations from way back when the Native Americans were living in teepees and on their own, and they didn't have to worry about who was looking over their back or watching every move they made, can you compare and contrast those? Or communicate explanations and interpretations based on the analysis that you do find? This can be used in a classroom when you have your students learning about Native American tribes. Have them pick one that's specific to them. Have them go in and do the research to communicate with the Native Americans. It will help their background knowledge and their knowledge in general of what has actually happened to them and how it has affected their present lifestyles. Strategy 12. Culturally responsive teaching techniques questions. So, what issues are surrounding Native American education? What do you think? I know when I thought about it, I knew that the Native Americans really seemed to struggle in school, and I wanted to know why. Do you? Why are Native Americans being left behind in school systems? Why is teaching students about Native American culture important? And how does it have benefits? Or does it even have benefits? How can educators, you, me, and the other guy, engage our students in Native American exploration the right way? Issues in Native American education. Way back when, the Native American boarding school history. There was a boarding school, and if you were bad or you couldn't learn right or you did something wrong, they would starve you. They would beat you. They would do anything under the sun. They made sure that you didn't speak your native language. You had to speak English. This is traumatizing for students. That's something that they cannot get past, and it will be passed down from generation to generation to generation. Lack of childhood education. This even has a problem because the children aren't getting their proper motor skills. Even poverty. Those kids can't make it to school on time or don't have the option to. Those Native American students are basically walking in two worlds. Can you tell me why or how they feel? The importance of teaching Native American culture. Improving the quality and assess the Native American curriculum benefits all students. For non-Native students, it can lead to greater awareness and compassion. For Native students, it can teach students and resiliency, foster positive identity, develop and help uphold tribal sovereignty. It can also support academic success, which can make a big impact soon and have an impact at both the individual and community levels. Simply stated, when all students know the correct narrative about Native Americans and learn the vital, unique, and ongoing contributions of its country's original and habitats, there is a greater understanding and ultimately a better outcome for students, communities, and our nation as a whole. So basically, being educated in Native American culture helps everyone, the community, the states, you name it, it helps it because they do have that background knowledge. They do have that compassion. They know what they've been through. And it is so important to feel what they have gone through and support them in any way that you can. Native American exploration the right way. Talk to the primary source. Take field trips. Have guest speakers. Go to museums. Social studies standards. They're the same ones that I used in Standard 18. How does the strategy work? Choose one specific Native American group. Focus on it. Do research on the focus. Identify many different natural resources. Brainstorm how natural resources could have been part of daily life. for tribal members. Provide time to share.